bloody fantastic. Look at that. Oh, genius. Never thought of doing that in my life. I'm not saying I ever will because I can't be bothered, but that is a fantastic thing to do. Secondly, straight to 4 plates, no warm-up. You're a menace to society. Honestly, do you have a therapist? I know a great one. Fantastic. Back in the day, when the channel first started growing a couple of years ago, one thing I used to do was go through Instagram and just look at all the ridiculous nonsense that people were putting out there. And I figured, you know what, I actually quite like those videos, so we're going to do them again. I have a folder on my Instagram saved as YouTube roasting. So guess what we're doing today? Roasting on YouTube. Before we do so, a couple of things. Firstly, TFNL clothing, as always, link down below in the description. Best clothing you'll never wear. And if at any point throughout this video you agree with anything I'm saying, or even just actually just like the video, I would very much appreciate it if you did subscribe to the channel, because it does mean a lot to me. And if you don't do that, I'll probably cry on my own because I don't have that many friends. This video is largely going to surround glute training today, and we're going to debunk a lot of myths and silly movements that you might be doing, and I'm going to tell you why you shouldn't. Point of view, you discovered seated sumo squats and can finally feel them 10 times more in your glutes, experience zero back pain, and feel the top shelving by the minute. This is a move I know many of you see online where you do a seated good morning variation, and when you're looking at glute training specifically, or growing the glutes, please don't do this. So ultimately, when you are doing like a good morning variation, like an RDL, whatever it may be, a standard variation, the big thing that's really going to work the glutes there is the fact that the hips are hinging backwards. You are kicking your bum back. That's going to take the glutes into a lengthened position and ultimately change the length of the muscle. So it gets lengthened, and as you contract, it gets shortened. The hips aren't actually traveling anywhere. They're not going back, therefore the glutes aren't lengthening. Therefore, this movement isn't actually going to be that effective for the glutes whatsoever. It's going to be more effective for things like the lower back. I say to people when they are doing good mornings and RDLs that your range of motion essentially stops when your hips can't travel back any further, because essentially when they can't travel back and you're just going down and up, you're driving a lot of work through the lower back, and that's exactly what you're doing here. The part that we try and avoid in an RDL or a good morning, where you are just going down and up, is exactly what you're practicing when doing the seated. So no, this is not going to be very good for your glutes. And just because it may feel like it might be working well for your glutes doesn't mean it actually is. Which actually brings us to the second video. Mind-muscle connection. I'll never stop posting about the art of isolation and the importance of mind-muscle connection when lifting. Before you know it, your glutes will be growing, legs will be slimming, and core will be strong. Let me teach you. The mind-muscle connection is essentially your ability to feel the muscles working when performing a movement. So if you do a press up or a push up, or whatever you want to call it, and you really contract your chest, you can feel the chest working. That's going to be that mind-muscle connection. That doesn't necessarily correlate to anything of relevance when looking at actually building muscle. Sure, it can be used as a tool to maybe help you feel like you're doing the movement properly, but ultimately I can make many muscles feel like they're working when they're not, just by contracting a specific way. I could make this movement feel really good in my calves if I contract them by pointing the toe in a certain direction. Doesn't mean the calves are actually doing anything. I'm just basically convincing myself that they are. When in reality, as you get stronger and you lift more, your ability to feel the muscle working will probably decrease, because to be honest, if you're lifting close enough to failure, you're probably hoping that you don't collapse, crumble, and die. But in reality, mind muscle connection is not that deep. Sure, this is a fine variation of movement if you want to do it, because we're actually getting a good hinge here, which we didn't see in the previous video. See this? The hips are going back. That means the glutes will be lengthening. You're not just going up and down. I like that. But honestly, mind muscle connection is not the end of the world. Mind muscle connection won't change the fundamentals of biomechanics. If you do a bicep curl, where you're obviously curling, just because you may not feel your biceps doesn't mean they aren't working, because you physically could not perform this movement without the biceps being the prime movers, and sensation won't dictate that. Point of view, they accuse you of wearing butt pads, but in reality it's because you started adding the superset into your glute days to build that upper shelf. A couple of things. Firstly, great Smith machine, Cybex, fantastic brand, love it. Secondly, honestly, health and safety. Health and safety. If I stand at the edge of the bench, I'm doing a wheelie and I'm flipping over real quick, and that's going to bang your shins. If there's one thing you don't like, getting your shins banged. Do you ever go scooter where you try and do like a tail whip? Hits your shins, it feels like your life has just ended. Standing on such an elevated platform, firstly, Alicia Keys may quite like falling, but I don't. Secondly, stability. Being on this bench where the pad is very soft is just going to hammer stability and make it worse. You want the movement to be more stable. Great, that's been done on a Smith machine. That's stable, we like it. But this wibbly wobbly soft bench, especially when you wear as much as I do, I'm going through the pad and I will be wibbling and wobbling like jelly, and that's not a sight for anybody to see. That's Cassidy again, I didn't even realise. We didn't in my feed twice. face. Oh, I saved you, of course you are. A single leg good morning variation is fine, but you can just do it on the floor. I get how it's going to a step up variation. What I would say with that is there's a lot of range of motion left there. I just choose a smaller bench if you want to. Maybe do like the good morning on the floor and then maybe step up to a step up afterwards if you want to do that superset. Personally, I probably wouldn't, because a couple of things we'll look at there. Firstly, with the step up, a lot more range of motion can be acquired here. We want to go down to about 90 degrees. Secondly, you're doing two movements that kind of work the glutes in a similar manner. The kind of good morning variation is going to be lengthened position. The step up variation is also going to be lengthened position. What you would probably better find is if you are going to do that, you want to pair it lengthened and shortened, probably shorten first. Where you might go, if you are going to superset, you probably do like a hip thrust and then go into a good morning from there, or like maybe a barbell hip thrust on the Smith machine. Fantastic, means easier to load weights. Then go into like a dumbbell RDL afterwards. That could be a good pairing. A lot on this is very Instagrammable, and just because it looks good for the old social media machine doesn't mean it's going to be good for your bottom, nor maybe even your health and safety. Very quickly, link down below, we got a few things. You've got the link to apply to work myself on a one-to-one coaching basis, where I can help coach you towards your goals online, whatever they may be and wherever you may be in the world. You've also got the link to the TFNL workout guides, which tell you what to do, tell you why you're doing it, and also show you how to do it too. You've also got the link to the TFNL clothing, obviously, shout out once again. You've also got the link to the TFNL team training programs, which for less than $1 a day, you can follow a program written by me with the team that gets updated every block, and we can talk and waffle together if you so wish. And as always, they're always linked down below in the description. This is going to egg people on. I know it is. I'm sorry, but I'm going to say things that go against your beliefs. Loads of people used to do variations like this as like a sissy squat variation and use them to heavily target the quads. Couple of things there. Firstly, this is not very good for the quads whatsoever. When you're looking at quad training, you're essentially looking at knee flexion. So with that, we want to see how much the knee is bending and how far the knee is traveling. So for example, this, where you're only going to 90 degrees, limited knee flexion there. So you're only lengthening the quads to a certain degree. If you want this to be more effective, you'd actually allow yourself to go a lot lower and drive the knees a lot more forward, thus lengthening the quads a lot more, thus taking them through a greater and more relevant range of motion. Fantastic for the quads. It's also not actually a sissy squat variation, despite a lot of people calling it that. A sissy squat is where you're essentially on your toes and you, boom. If I do that now, I'd fall over, and there are people below me, not physically, I'm not sat on top of anyone, but there is a flat below me, and I don't trust how strong these floors are. Nor do I trust I won't get an angry message in the group chat telling the oversized elephant above them to stop falling on the floor, basically. You could argue there is some glute effectiveness here, because again, we're going down to that 90-degree mark, which typically aligns well with glute training. When we're doing like a single leg press or like a split squat, we typically look for 90 degrees and vertical shins for glute work, because we are essentially limiting knee flexion, so how much the knee is bending, but maximizing the lengthening of the glutes there. So I respect it. So for glutes, this may actually be valid, but I just wanted to kind of point out some tips and tricks, because I know a lot of people will do this for the quads. One of the big things when doing a movement like this is you need to be able to push it hard enough. This is something, if you are going to do it and insist on doing it, I'd probably do it near the end of the workout, and don't be afraid to add resistance. Feeling and squeezing is great, but you still want to get stronger while you do it. All right, last one. Go on then, glutes. Shock. There's a theme to this video. It's actually funny, because considering how small my bum is, I do talk about the bum quite a lot. Bloody fantastic. Look at that. Blood. Genius. Never thought of doing that in my life. I'm not saying I ever will, because I can't be bothered, but that is a fantastic thing to do. Secondly, straight to 4 plates, no warm-up. You're a menace to society. Honestly, do you have a therapist? I know a great one. Fantastic. That's menacing. I always take my time warming up. I probably warm up excessively, but I'd rather be safe than sorry. That's also a really good way to lower the bar. Genius. Techno gym in the background? Pff, not my friend. I don't like techno gym. Hip thrust, banging movement. Honestly, I love seeing people hip thrust heavy, because I know it's so good for you. Honestly, just lifting heavy in general, I love it. And remember, strength is relative. Hip thrust, first movement, banging start to a glute session. I respect it. Big fan. We're going to an RDL variation. Again, bloody heavy, strong individual. I respect it. Oh, that's like a B stance RDL with a bit of, that is fantastic. Look at that. Not excessive ROM either. Going down to the right point where the hips are no longer traveling back any further. That's top tier. We've got hip thrust, shorten position glute movement, RDL variation, lengthen position glute movement with some hamstrings in there as well. Bang, bang, bang. I love it. Is it going to be a split squat? It must be a split squat. It is. Oh, look at that. Fantastic. What I would say, firstly, the glute bias split squat, because we noticed that by the vertical shin angle. If it was a bit more quad bias, that knee would be driving more forward, more knee flexion. I like this because although technically, yes, another lengthen position glute movement, it's unilateral now, hitting it slightly differently. I respect it. What I would say though, is if you are going to use one dumbbell at a time, I respect it, but hold on to something. You have a free hand here. Make the movement more effective for hypertrophy by making it more stable. To make it more stable, hold on to a bar, hold on to a rack, whatever it may be, but use this hand to stabilize yourself a bit further, just to reduce the stability demand of the movement. So far, 3 for 3. Fantastic setup. Oh, is it a kickback? 10 out of 10. Personally, I love a glute med kickback, but you could do any kickback variation you want. Finishing with isolation, short in position, kickback work. Honestly, 4 for 4. Is that it? Is that the session? Oh, fantastic. Honestly, wouldn't change it. That's why we're deemed to be a top tier session. Not excessive volume, not an excessive number of exercises. Each movement does something slightly differently. Lengthen, shorten, unilateral, isolation. Honestly. Also, you've got the hamstring working there from the RDLs, you've got the quad working there from the split squats. That's fantastic. For a glute dominant leg day, that's top tier. Fantastic, lovely source. Who are you? Never heard of you before in my life, but of the one video I've seen of you, that's top tier. That's really good. And there's one thing I like on this channel, is good sessions. But that's it. That's the video. And like with all my videos, it is simply my opinion, and I'd love to hear your opinion in the comment section below. So let me know, what is your favorite glute movement and why? Until the next one, thank you for tolerating me. Thank you for tolerating my waffle about the bottom once again, and thank you for tolerating the video.